Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris or Velo Sews on social media. Welcome back to Seoul Organised Style podcast featuring textile artists with the upcoming Making Zen online retreat from the 27th of May to the 31st of May. Grab a cuppa and relax with us.
Sometimes I use colorful, very bold colors, but a lot of times I find myself when I use subtle colors, I feel comfortable.
That's one of the textile art aspects Youngmin Lee discusses on today's podcast. As Kate Ward said, she selected tutors for the retreat who are textile artists. We get to learn one skill from them, but we certainly get an inside look into how textile artists put their whole selves into their works. Let's listen to Youngmin now.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm glad we met.
I'm glad we met too. I'm really pleased that you're here for the podcast for the Making Zen online retreat.
Thank you.
That's okay. I was looking at your Instagram account and listeners won't be able to see it, but there are a couple of really beautiful pieces right behind Youngmin at the moment. And there was one which was the circles that you'd been doing for a while. Can you talk us through what the circles was all about?
Oh, these circles are my work in progress piece that I stitch and connect together using coffee filter. Every morning I make coffee and I get wonderful, perfect circle after I make coffee. So I just decided to use this for something. And I started putting pieces together using a kind of Yeojumun cathedral window pattern that you can see from.
Mhm.
So I am really enjoy working on recycled new material.
You've given it a second life.
Right.
Its first life was to give you coffee in the morning so you can get started.
That's right.
The colors that you use are very gentle colors. So the fabrics and even like the reused coffee filters, that's a very gentle brown beige color. Is that a choice of yours?
Sometimes I use colorful, very bold colors, but a lot of times I find myself when I use subtle colors, I feel comfortable.
Yeah,
So maybe I could say these are my color palette.
that's true. And one of the other pieces that I saw, which was using denim strips, was that also a recycled piece?
That is remnants that I got from Indigo Dye Studio. It's actually Raimi, gives you a look of denim.
Yep.
That piece of work, again, I used leftover materials from Dye Studio that they don't use anymore because of the old shape and it's small bits. Again, I try to give a second life using remnants because jogakbo, the work that I do, is a patchwork bojagi and original jogakbo is using recycled materials.
That aspect is why people enjoy taking part in the retreat when they get to learn from textile artists like yourself.
I see.
Previous textile artists give us a new skill and a creative approach that is both mindful and uses existing resources. So my question is using existing resources an important part of your art focused on Bojagi and Jabako?
When I make bojagi, I usually use my hand stitching. Most of my works are done by hand stitching, and hand stitching is very slow. But while I use my hand and do add pieces, oftentimes I find peace of mind. Also, by act of doing hand stitching can be an act of wishing happiness for someone who will get this bojagi jogakbo, my finished work, or someone who will see and enjoy. So I try to put slow stitch with my good intention.
When you provide one of your pieces to someone as a gift, do you see that joy in their face when they receive what you've created?
I hope so. When people get presents or gifts, first the people are happy because they are receiving something as a gift. Also, nicely wrapped bojagi or jogakbo were presented at the same time, I think the joy can be doubled. I think my imbued wishes for happiness can be shared when they receive that gift with Bojagi wrapped.
It's an ongoing joy that they receive from you, which is lovely.
And also, I feel joy when am making things without thinking the use or recipients or anything. Act of hand stitching gives me joy too. So I think I can benefit from it too.
Lovely. So people who haven't met you before, can you tell us where you started from with your skill and where you've gotten to now?
I'm a textile artist who uses Korean traditional textile techniques and aesthetics, including Bojagi, Korean wrapping cloth. My background is clothing and textile and fashion design. So I was trained as a fashion designer when I was in school and worked, but I moved from Seoul, South Korea to the United States 28 years ago. After I moved to a new country, new culture, and new everything, I was busy and couldn't pursue my dream, which was working in fashion industry. I was quiet and adjusting life for some time. After that, when I had the time and felt the urge of creating something, I picked up Bojagi. So Bojagi is my material now, and by using my hand stitching, I love to create and share and teach people not only techniques, but also textile traditions and history and my passion and little piece of happiness too.
Sounds like a lot of happiness now.
Right.
At the Making Zen online retreat, what will you be showing people?
Since my main medium is Bojagi, I will use one of Bojagi making technique, especially jogakbo, patchwork Bojagi style. From watching and learning from my part from making Zen online retreat, people will be able to make small three-dimensional coaster. So I call it Barbara's coaster. My friend Barbara once challenged me by sending me a photo of this coaster that she saw while she was traveling. So she said, you might be a person who can figure it out how to make this three-dimensional piece. So I took some time to figure it out and then made it. And I added jogakbo piecing style and techniques. So I call it Barbara's coaster using jogakbo style detail. So that will be the project that I will do and share with Making Zen retreat people.
Oh, lovely. And will people be able to then use those skills for other things and maybe to develop your cupcake cushions? They're so cute.
Thank you. Yeah, that's another thing that I found making and feeling joy all at the same time. So cupcake is another project that I did, and it's very simple construction, but in the middle of the cupcake pincushion, I added little piece of happiness. I call it happiness, but actually it is a bat-shaped knot, flying bat. So I call it bakji meduk, and Korean people believe bakji will bring you joy and happiness because it sounds same as happiness when you write down. So I often use that decoration to get more happiness.
If people haven't looked at your Instagram account, they really need to go and see all of the different work that you've done, including the book that you recently published as well.
Yeah, my book is coming this summer in July. My book will come out in the UK and Australia, and in the US, it will be available in September. I really had a great time writing about history, culture, and how to, and talking about the materials and how to handle the materials and how to design things and 17 different big and small projects so people can see and learn about Bojagi.
I'm really excited for you and congratulations on having the book published this year.
Thank you.
How did you develop your online name?
My website is my name, www.youngminlee.com. And my Instagram handle is, again, Youngmin Lee _Bojagi. And I have another handle, Korea textile tour because I lead the Korea textile tour every year. So I love to use the name Bojagi since it's my main medium, creative tool, and I wish people can recognize my name. So I use Bojagi in my name in most of my online names.
One other thing that I wanted listeners to have a look at on your Instagram account, the wrapping. You've already talked about wrapping. I've seen it around where I live, but it was really lovely to see a really fast way of how you wrap things. I think it was to do with the Christmas presents.
So since Bojagi is a wrapping cloth, not only making, but I also enjoy using it. So one Christmas season, I natural dyed a bunch of square fabrics and I used them to wrap my Christmas presents. So one year I put all the nicely wrapped my presents under the tree, and that was my experience of using Bojagi in traditional way, but also share the thoughts and happiness with people. When people get that present, they can keep that Bojagi and reuse for their own purpose or use. People can keep using Bojagi, and at the same time, the happiness can be passed and shared around.
At Christmas time, when there are a lot of gifts and we unwrap them, that paper tends to go to the trash. So when people use Bojagi, they're actually using it as a wrapping, but then the gift plus the wrapping is again more joy to the person that receives it.
Right, exactly.
So the final question I have for you is, what advice would you give people who are thinking of taking part in the Making Zen online retreat?
I hope people enjoy the slow stitching and slow sewing process. It is way slower than using sewing machine, but hand sewing is very meditative. And I often feel peace of mind and calmness while I stitch. And I believe you can imbue your positive and happy thoughts to your work when you hand stitch. So this is my way to wish for happiness, not only for recipients of the work, but also for myself, for yourself if you're hand stitching. So I hope people enjoy slow stitching. Speed doesn't matter, and try to feel happiness.
People don't have to buy new fabric or resources to do your class, do they?
No, people don't have to buy new materials. I always encourage people look around and use the material on hand. 조각보 doesn't require much of big quantity of fabric, and the project that I will lead is relatively very small. So use your favorite scraps that will be a good use and make a new project, and that will give you joy.
Wonderful. Youngmin Lee, thank you for coming onto the podcast for the Making Zen online retreat.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode for the Making Zen online retreat on Seoul Organised Style podcast was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Kate Ward, sound by bensound.com. To register for the Making Zen online retreat, there's a link in the show notes as well as on our podcast page and on our podcast Instagram account. Make sure you book in to the Making Zen online retreat using those links. You can subscribe to Seoul Organised Style podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Making Zen podcast archive. And if you can, consider supporting the production of this podcast on Patreon. In the show notes, there's a link so that you can register for the Making Zen online retreat. It's free to watch for the first 24 hours of every day from the 27th to the 31st of May. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.